She walks out of work at midnight, every agonizing step being felt by her swollen feet. Having survived one of the busiest nights at the diner, she daydreams of things-to-do list that has to be tackled tomorrow and the hot bath waiting for her when she gets to her house. Suddenly, she is brought back to reality when she hears footsteps falling behind her. She strains to hear their rhythm, trying to assure herself it's just someone out for an evening stroll, or perhaps just needing to buy something at the corner store. Desperately, she tries to keep her heart from pounding so loud that the whole neighborhood isn't awakened. She picks up her stride and turns the first corner towards home, convinced her imagination is working overtime until she actually noticed the heavy falling footsteps turn the corner and quicken their pace. She turns sharply, ready to face the unseen stranger, but all she views is an empty sidewalk. Though no one appears to be around, the hair on the back of her neck stands up, warning her of impending danger. She looks around for anything that'll offer her safety, when she sees the local cemetery groundskeeper tending to one of the graves. Quickly she reaches the cemetery's large cast-iron gate and throws it open with a force that even surprises her. Running through the grounds, she is unaware that the footsteps have stopped short, refusing to enter this forbidden darkness of souls. She stumbles on the first mound encountered and scrambles to get up. Finally getting to her feet, she realizes something is preventing her from moving. Looking down, she sees dirt-encrusted hands rising from the bowels of the grave and encircling her ankles. She lets out a blood-curdling scream and fights desperately to get released, but the gnarled hands hang on with an unearthly strength. Kicking as hard as she can, she loses her balance, falls backwards and begins being pulled under the soft soil, down into the eternal darkness, down into the terror that lies beneath. Her fingernails claw at the empty air and she brings them down, where they settle on the handle of a shovel, left behind from work done earlier than the day. She lifts it in the air and comes down hard on the imprisoning hands. The grip loosens for a split second, time enough for her to break free and scramble from their reach. She quickly rises and looks for the groundskeeper, knowing he is her only chance to survive. "Over here," she hears someone yell. "Come over here, I can protect you." The voice beckons her to a lake in the middle of the grounds. Searching the area with her tired eyes, she can't see who summoned her. Then the water starts to stir and a man appears, rising from the water's ripples. She stares at the broken face. One eye, apparently injured in some long-ago accident, is shut, the other taunting her with its evilness. A large wart on his forehead is only overpowered by the scar stretching across his cheek. Out of the corner of her eye, she spots the groundskeeper and tries to break away from the force she finds enveloping her mind. A force so engulfing that it pulls her to the water's edge. She sees the beauty of the rippling water and feels an almost overpowering urge to slip into its unspoken promise of safety. As she is about to enter into the velvety softness of the lake, a cat streaks by behind her, scared by some unheard noise in the night, and breaks her from her trance. She gathers her wits quickly and races off towards the groundskeeper. "He's the only one here to help me," she thinks, getting closer to him with every stride. Begging for his help as she runs towards him, she doesn't notice that he seems not to hear. She only knows that a few more footsteps and she can be safe again. A few more steps to someone who will guide her out of this garden of terror. A few more steps and she's on her way home. Just a few more steps. As she reaches him, she feels her burning lungs about to explode. Her air supply exhausted by the marathon gait she never knew she was capable of. Her hands grab at the cape that he wears, protection against the cold night air. "Help me, please," she stammers. "I need your help to get out of here." He slowly turns around and her body shudders uncontrollably as she stares into the face of death. The last thing she hears is the unmistakable voice offering his frightful greeting, "Welcome." Ever since I was 15 or 16, I have been having a recurring nightmare. Every month, I have the same horrible dream again and again. In the nightmare, I find myself alone in an abandoned building. I am standing in a dimly lit hallway when all of a sudden I hear very distant sounds. Thud, thud, thud. The violent blows echo throughout the building. Then, the noise begins to get closer, creeping towards me down the long and gloomy corridor. That's when the terror grips me and I turn to start running back down the hallway, searching desperately for a place to hide. I run until I reach a door at the end of the hallway, and there is nowhere else to go. I open the door and find an unfinished bathroom. Closing the door behind me, I crouch in the corner and listen to the sound of the violent blows drawing ever closer. Thud, thud, thud. Finally, the noises reach the bathroom and heavy blows rain down on the bathroom door where I am hiding. The door trembles with every blow, and I bury my head between my legs, hoping it'll end. The sound of the blows become louder and stronger. Just when the door seems as if it is about to give in, I wake up in my own bed, shaking and sweating. Every day after I have this nightmare, I can't shake the feeling that I'm being watched. It is as if someone or something is watching me and watching everything I do at every moment of every day. Sometimes, out of the corner of my eye, I catch a glimpse of a girl. I have seen her when I was in class at school, walking down the street, or just hanging out with friends. As soon as I notice her, she seems to disappear into thin air. She seems to be a girl around my age, and she is always dressed in gray. Whenever I spotted her, I only caught a brief glimpse, but afterwards, I could not stop shaking. It was 3 months ago when I flipped through the newspaper that I read the horrible news about the murders. It seems that an entire family in my city had been brutally killed. The father, mother, and the 2 teenage daughters were beaten to death in their own apartment, and the 3rd girl was missing. There were some black and white photos of the crime scene. The photos were taken in the family's living room, and it was completely destroyed. The table lay in pieces, the curtains were torn, and the mirror was broken. The carpet was covered in splinters and pieces of shattered glass, and there were pools of blood all over the floor. But that's not what caught my attention, and caused me to break out into a cold sweat, and made me shiver uncontrollably. It was one of the other photos, the photo of the missing daughter. I recognized her immediately. It was the girl in gray. I was sure it was the same girl I had caught fleeting glimpses out of the corner of my eye. Although I had only seen her from afar, I was sure it was her. That night, I was terrified of going to sleep. I was afraid of what I might dream. I tried desperately to stay awake, drinking endless cups of coffee and glasses of cola, but it was no use. Eventually, I fell asleep and had the nightmare again. In the dream, I found myself back in the dingy, abandoned building, and again I heard the noises. The nightmare was the same as it always had been, except for one thing. This time I didn't wake up when the door finally gave in to the strong blows. Instead, I heard the door cracking and I felt the splinters fall on me. Then I looked up and saw what was standing there. It was the girl in gray. Her hair was long, her skin was pale, and she was barefoot. When I finally saw her face, it left me petrified. Her face was almost the same as mine. It was like looking in a mirror. She stood there before me, staring at me with a sinister smile on her face. In one hand she had a bloody iron bar. I was paralyzed by fear and couldn't move. At the moment I realized I was completely naked. That's when the girl came rushing towards me. She jumped on me, but she never landed on me. Instead, she seemed to go right through me. It was as if she had somehow jumped into me. When I woke up, I was terrified, pale and sweating. I had the strangest feeling inside. It felt like there was something moving about inside my body. Since then, I have not seen the girl in gray. A few weeks later, I discovered I was pregnant. I'm not married, and I've never had a boyfriend, so how can I be pregnant? It's impossible. And yet, there's a baby growing inside of me. The doctor told me it is a girl. I'm very scared of what might happen. What am I giving birth to? A baby or a demon? If anyone has any idea what's happened to me, or if someone had the same experience, please tell me about it. I'm really scared. One day there was a new kid in my class. Nobody knew who he was. He didn't have any friends and never talked to anyone. He was always just laying with his head down on his desk, looking depressed. I wondered if there was something the matter with him. "What's wrong?" I asked one day when we were alone. "Did something bad happen to you?" When he heard my question, his hands started shaking. He let out a big, long, deep sigh, steadied himself, and slowly he began to talk. He said that 1 month ago something had happened that really disturbed him. He was sitting in his room playing games on his computer when he happened to glance up at his ceiling. He noticed that the board covering the entrance to the attic was out of place. He wanted to investigate, so he grabbed a flashlight, stood on his chair, and climbed up into the attic. When he got up there, he was surprised by how large the attic was. He shone the flashlight around, but he couldn't see any of the walls or the roof. It seemed as if the darkness stretched on forever. He began walking forward, searching for whatever could have moved the board. All of a sudden, the batteries in his flashlight ran out and he was plunged into darkness. He was scared. The darkness seemed to surround him, encroaching on all sides. He began searching for the way out. He wanted to go back down to his bedroom, but no matter what direction he walked in, he couldn't find the opening. There was no light at all leaking in. It was pitch black. He was lost and alone in his own attic. He continued wandering around in the dark, searching for a way out, but he couldn't see where he was going and became disoriented. He had no idea where he had come from and didn't know which direction he was going. He began to panic and continued walking and walking. He didn't know how long he'd been walking, but he finally saw the faint glow of light in the distance. He started walking faster. He was sure that it must be the light from his room. But as he got closer and closer, he realized it couldn't be the light from his bedroom. He got close enough to make out where the light was coming from. It was a city in the distance. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. It just didn't make sense. There was an entire city in his attic, and the lights could be seen from quite a distance. It seemed impossible. He didn't know what else to do. He didn't know where else to go. He began walking towards the city, hoping somehow that he could find his way home. At this point in the story, he began shaking again. He let out a pained sigh and tears rolled down his cheeks. I was puzzled by his story, so I tried to console him best I could. "You're okay now," I said, patting him on the shoulder. "It was scary, but you're back now." He looked up at me, tears still running down his face. He slowly shook his head and said, "You don't understand. I still haven't found a way out of the city." Thank you guys so much for listening. If you enjoyed what you heard, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. But I've been Just Plain Creepy, and I'll catch you in the next video.